Would Nvidia really stop production of Ampere RTX 3000 GPUs? This was a rumor a few weeks ago, but some sources are now indicating that there are a lot less GPUs on the market this week. So, did they do it? I don't know. Let's talk about what's going on with that as well as GPU pricing. Hey guys, Tiago with Classical Technology here. Remember to subscribe and smash that like button if you like updates on GPUs, computer hardware, CPUs, pretty much everything to do with building a computer. So let's talk about the topic at hand. A few weeks ago, if you guys remember, there was this weird rumor that Nvidia may halt their production of RTX 3000 Ampere GPUs. Now, the reasoning behind this was that they had to really make sure that they would have sufficient stock levels, be consistent throughout the different quarters, for whatever financial reasons, as well as to help sort of, really save themselves from any type of a GPU market crash that could happen at any moment. Now, the GPU market is as strong as ever. We can see by really high prices, very low availability, and this is going to coincide once again with the record highs of cryptocurrency, specifically Ethereum. Something else that really has jacked up all of these prices is that there was supposed to be some changes coming to Ethereum at the end of this year, but that has tentatively been pushed back into around July of 2022. That seems to be a pretty common theme. It's always pushed back. So as far as we can tell, Ethereum pricing highly correlated with everything to do with GPU availability and prices. And it seems like they want to keep this going for a lot longer, which is good news if you're a crypto miner, but not really such great news if you're a gamer or an enthusiast wanting to get a GPU at a reasonable price. So that points us back to Nvidia. Would they really halt production? I mean, the market is pretty bare as it is, and if we look at some of the pricing data from some of these venues in Europe, we can see that AMD for the first time in certain places have had more sort of sales and things like that versus Nvidia. Now, we know that generally Nvidia will outsell AMD GPUs, maybe by a factor of 7 or 8 to 1, simply because Nvidia just manufactures a tremendous amount more GPUs than AMD. They have a lot more potential to focus on GPUs. AMD, as we know, is reliant on TSMC, as well as having multiple avenues that they have to focus on, including CPUs, as well as all of the next generation gaming consoles. So Nvidia has their GPUs. They sell them a lot more than an AMD. So in certain markets, to see AMD start to outsell Nvidia, that means only one thing. There are no Nvidia GPUs for people to buy because, as we've seen, generally it's the AMD GPUs sticking around on the shelves, and the Nvidia GPUs generally will fly off the shelves pretty fast. So they're just not there to buy. As we can see by these pricing trends and availability, you can see that once again pricing has crept back up. Now, if you ever look at an Ethereum graph of how that went price-wise, May was the absolute peak when Ethereum first reached these record highs, and then it sort of, came down a little bit. It was pretty consistent, but recently, if you guys have been following what's been going on, the pricing has once again skyrocketed, pretty much past those record highs to new record highs, and it seems like GPUs are also following. This is probably the worst case scenario for the end of the year, because now not only do we have very profitable and very high cryptocurrency prices, which keeps these GPUs churning even more and more and people wanting to buy them, we also have a lot of manufacturing as well as the supply side issues with even container ships being stuck on docks and things like that, not being able to deliver these GPUs. That's going to deliver a 1-2 punch this holiday season where demand typically is higher than normal. That's why even in this November's Black Friday sales, you can once again for another year really expect to find absolutely no GPUs at all. So to go back to the question of the video, would Nvidia really artificially limit the amount of GPUs that they're manufacturing? Well, that's really hard to say. It's a lot of speculation. You would think that they would want to release as many GPUs as possible, even though they really haven't been able to keep up with demand. And if they sort of have been keeping up with demand, perhaps the LHR GPUs have worked somewhat to keep more GPUs sort of, available for gamers, even though the main problem now is not only the availability, but also the pricing. Even when you find these GPUs in stock, the pricing has really completely gotten out of control. So who really knows if Nvidia would sort of, slow down production or not? So there are many factors that will influence production, and not to mention potentially Nvidia may be announcing some new GPUs fairly soon. as early as January of 2022. So only in about 2 months or so. Potentially it's going to be a 3070 Ti 16 gigabyte model, as well as a 3080 a 12 gigabyte model, and potentially a 3090 Ti that may start to take advantage of the new PCIe Generation 5 that we're going to find in the new Intel and the new CPU architectures going forward. So all of these GPUs mean that the current 3080, current 3070 Ti, maybe even the current 3070, the regular one, really make very little sense in the market. Why would you want to buy a 10 gigabyte of VRAM 3080 when you can have a 12 or a 16 gigabyte 3070 Ti? There's a lot of stuff here, numbers that don't exactly make sense, but in the past, Nvidia has done some pretty funny things with some GPU releases. Take the weaker RTX 3060 versus the 3060 Ti. The 3060 has 12 gigabytes of VRAM, while the 3060 Ti, which is in all cases a better GPU in terms of gaming, has a lot less at 8 gigabytes of VRAM. So certainly wouldn't be surprising to see perhaps a 3070 Ti have more VRAM than a 3080, a 12 gigabyte version, but we're going to have to wait and see what's going on there. So that could be a reason why maybe the supply and the manufacturing of the current Ampere GPUs, maybe that's what people are talking about. They're stopping the 3080, 3070 in order to prepare for the new GPUs that they're going to be releasing. After all, it seems like most of the GPUs that were absent from a lot of the resellers that we saw were these higher end models like the 3070 and 3080. So maybe it makes sense if they stop that, but it doesn't mean they stopped production completely. Maybe they just ramped up production of a new, perhaps secret GPU line that we don't know yet because it hasn't been announced, and they're not releasing it to the public, so people just assume that they're not making any GPUs. That's why we can't go purely on the assumption of not seeing any 3080s or 3070s, because they could simply be making 3080s with 12 gigabyte or 3070 Ti with 16 gigabyte, and we would have no way of knowing because these GPUs simply are not official yet. Would that mean that they're building up stock for perhaps a January release where they would have a lot of inventory? Perhaps. I mean, people certainly would be kind of excited for a better 3080. 3080 is pretty amazing, as well as the 3070. So to have a 3070 Ti and a 3080 with more VRAM, I think, especially if they're in stock a little bit more, most people won't care if it's LHR or not. Certainly, a lot of people will jump at them. And that sort of allocation for sort of the first quarter of 2022 would also be great for Nvidia's quarter and their profits, shifting some of the sales they could have done at the end of this year to next year. So that way, it seems like they're having a much better year than they perhaps would if they sold everything at the end of this year. So in that way, it probably makes sense if they slowed production down on older models to prepare for the newer releases. So if you're looking for a GPU, you just have to keep waiting. Prices really aren't getting any better. Availability is sort of hit or miss. Sometimes you can find these GPUs in stock, but of course you're going to have to pay pretty high prices. Now, will new GPU releases early on in 2022 make a difference? Perhaps, at least the initial rush of GPU releases seems to be the easier time to get a GPU. After time goes by and you're not part of that initial release rush, sometimes it seems to be very difficult to get these GPUs because of all the manufacturing issues and restocking delays. So I would say if you think a GPU is coming, sort of prepare for it and try to get it as soon as it's released. As from my experience, as well as many of my viewers, it seems easier to get them upon their release rather than wait and see what happens, because then they just end up disappearing and getting sold out and the price is going up through the roof. Alright guys, so let me know what you think. Do you think Nvidia would halt production, or perhaps they're preparing for the next batch of new GPUs? Remember to subscribe, smash that like button, and I'll see you guys on the next video.